If you've been diving into Path of Exile 2 lately, you already know things have gotten a lot more interesting with patch 0.5, Return of the Ancients. The meta didn't just shift a little bit, it got shaken up. We've got two brand new Ascendancies, a completely rebuilt endgame, and a wave of balance changes that actually make you rethink what class you want to commit to. So yeah, picking your class right now feels more important than ever. In this video, we're going through all 8 classes and breaking them down in a clean tier list based on the current meta. This is built from leaderboard performance and overall class strength, but keep in mind, this isn't some only S tier is playable situation. Even lower ranked classes can absolutely pop off if you build them right and understand how to play around their strengths. So whether you're chasing top end efficiency or just want something fun to run through the endgame, this tier list will help you figure out what actually fits your playstyle. I'm quickly moving on to the video and I'm ranking classes in Path of Exile 2. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching.
My friends, only 0.1% of viewers subscribe. If you like this type of content, please do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you in advance for your support.
The classes in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Mercenary. In the world of Path of Exile 2, the Mercenary shows up with that classic I am about to rain chaos with crossbows and grenades energy. And to be fair, it does look cool doing it. On paper, this class should feel like a high-tech demolition expert, constantly blowing things up from range while keeping enemies at a distance. But once you actually start pushing deeper into the game, especially through the campaign, things get a bit less glamorous and a lot more, why is this not hitting as hard as I expected? The biggest problem is consistency. You are constantly juggling positioning, spacing, and timing, and if even one of those feels off, your damage output drops faster than you would like. Crossbows can feel a bit clunky in fast encounters, and grenades, while satisfying, do not always line up perfectly with how aggressively enemies move. So you end up working harder than some other classes just to reach similar results, which is where that C tier feeling starts to make sense. Now, that does not mean the Mercenary is bad or unplayable. If anything, it is one of those classes that rewards patience and game knowledge more than raw button spam. The Tactician Ascendancy is the most straightforward entry point here. And honestly, it is the safest way to learn the class without getting overwhelmed. If you stick with it, learn the timing, and get comfortable with its rhythm, the Mercenary can absolutely perform. It just asks for more effort than most classes before it starts paying you back. The classes in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Warrior and Witch. When you step into the heavier side of Path of Exile 2, the Warrior is basically that one guy in the group who refuses to rush anything and somehow still survives everything. This class is built around maces, heavy armor, and the simple idea of I will take the hit and keep standing here. It is not flashy, but it has a very clear identity, durability over speed, every single time. Where the Warrior really shines is in how forgiving it feels. With the Titan Ascendancy boosting your life pool, you can make mistakes that would instantly punish other classes and still walk away like nothing happened. Your gear does not have to be perfect, your passive tree does not have to be min-maxed, and the game still lets you function. It is the kind of comfort pick that quietly carries players who just want stability instead of constant stress. The downside shows up the moment you care about speed. Clearing maps with Warrior feels like you are wading through enemies instead of deleting them. It works, it is reliable, but once you start comparing it to faster builds in higher tier maps, the difference becomes very noticeable. You are tanky, yes, but you are also slowly walking through chaos while everyone else is sprinting past it. Then you have the Witch, which flips the approach but keeps a similar philosophy. Instead of standing in the middle of fights, the Witch prefers to control everything from a distance with spells and summoned pressure. It is still beginner friendly, just in a more stay back and let the chaos happen for you kind of way. The Infernalist Ascendancy is currently the standout option for the Witch, and it is one of the most forgiving ways to experience endgame content. It gives you enough power and sustain that you are not constantly punished for small positioning mistakes, which makes learning the class feel smooth rather than stressful. You are still dealing damage over time and managing fights instead of instantly bursting everything down. But just like the Warrior, the Witch runs into the same wall when it comes to raw map clearing speed. It is built more for steady damage, boss fights, and controlled encounters rather than fast farming loops. So while both classes are absolutely solid and beginner friendly in their own ways, they sit in that B tier space where consistency is high, comfort is strong, but speed is not exactly their strongest trait. The classes in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Druid, Huntress, and Sorceress. When you start climbing into the stronger and more flexible side of Path of Exile 2, the Druid immediately stands out like it doesn't really belong to the same rulebook as everyone else. This class mixes strength and intelligence in a way that feels a bit illegal at first glance, blending raw physical combat with elemental nature magic. One moment you are smashing enemies up close, and the next you are bending the battlefield with spells that feel like they belong to an entirely different build. What makes the Druid interesting is how open-ended it is. You are not locked into one fantasy. You can lean into nature-based spellcasting, go more physical and brute force oriented, or build something more utility heavy, depending on how deep you want to go into customization. The Shaman Ascendancy is the easier entry point, giving you a smoother experience with elemental and nature-focused combat, while the Oracle Ascendancy pushes you into a more complex playstyle that rewards deep knowledge of positioning and passive tree planning. Of course, all that flexibility comes with a price, and in this case, it is gearing. You are basically managing a dual identity across strength and intelligence, which means every item choice requires a bit more thought than usual. It is not difficult in a frustrating way, but it definitely asks you to be more intentional. If you are fine with that extra layer of planning, the payoff is a very adaptable endgame experience that can shift depending on what you need. Then there is the Huntress, which honestly feels like the, wait, why is this so smooth? Surprise of patch 0.5 in Path of Exile 2. This class uses spears and combines dexterity and strength, letting you switch between close range and long range combat without feeling like you are changing characters entirely. That built-in flexibility is what makes it so dangerous in the right hands. The excitement around the Huntress mostly comes from the new Spirit Walker Ascendancy. It adds a layer of creativity that changes how you think about combat flow, and it is easily one of the most interesting additions in the current roster. It is the kind of design that encourages experimentation instead of just following a single optimized path. The downside is that the Huntress does not forgive mistakes easily. It relies heavily on evasion and positioning, which means if you are not comfortable staying mobile and reading enemy patterns, the campaign can feel punishing very quickly. It is powerful, but it expects you to stay alert at all times. And then you have the Sorceress, which is basically the definition of safe and strong in the current meta of Path of Exile 2. This is an intelligence-based class that uses wands and staves to unleash large elemental spell effects across wide areas. Everything about it is readable, satisfying, and consistent, which is why it is such a popular league start option. The Stormweaver Ascendancy, especially builds like Spark Stormweaver, is widely considered one of the strongest and most reliable ways to start a new patch. Damage feels immediate, screen coverage is excellent, and progression feels smooth from early game all the way into end game content. It is the kind of class that rarely feels like it is falling behind. The only real thing you have to actively manage is mana. It is not something you can ignore at any stage of the game. You will need to invest into it through gear, gems, flasks, and your passive tree consistently throughout the campaign. Once you accept that as part of the build, Sorceress becomes one of the most stable and comfortable choices you can make. The classes in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Monk and Ranger. At the absolute peak of the current meta in Path of Exile 2, the Monk is basically what happens when a class stops asking for permission and just starts deleting content. It runs on dexterity and intelligence, and it can use quarterstaves, staves, or even go completely unarmed depending on how far you want to push the fantasy. The whole playstyle is fast, fluid, and honestly a bit addictive once you get used to how it flows in combat. What makes the Monk so dangerous is how quickly it scales when everything clicks. You are not just hitting enemies, you are dancing through them, chaining movement and attacks in a way that feels almost unfair compared to slower classes. It is the kind of build where mistakes get punished, but skill gets rewarded even harder, which is exactly why it sits at the top. The Invoker Ascendancy is the standard for Monk, and it is the version you will most often see sitting at the top of hardcore ladders. It takes everything that makes the class strong and pushes it further into consistency and survivability without slowing it down too much. The result is a build that can perform in both high pressure and high-end content as long as the player knows what they are doing. Now shifting into the other side of S tier in Path of Exile 2, the Ranger is basically the definition of efficiency. This is a pure dexterity class that uses bows and evasion armor to turn maps into something that disappears before it even fully loads on your screen. It is fast, clean, and incredibly effective at clearing content. What pushes Ranger into S tier is how strong it is in two key areas: map clearing speed and currency generation. You are not just progressing, you are farming while progressing, which makes it one of the most efficient classes in the entire game. It is the kind of class that naturally accelerates your entire league experience without needing overly complex setups. Both Ascendancies, Deadeye and Pathfinder, contribute to that dominance in slightly different ways. Deadeye focuses on projectile scaling, giving you better chain, pierce, and raw speed, so your attacks cover massive areas. Pathfinder leans into flask optimization and poison-based scaling, creating a more sustained and utility-driven damage style. In both cases, the result is the same: top-tier performance that often shows up at the top of leaderboards, especially for players who want fast, consistent progression. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.